Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you are not too tired for this panel. And we have a fantastic panel. We have people from the government, from the tech industry, and from NGOs that we are going to talk about the future of work and how the fourth industrial revolution can help our countries. But before focusing on our experts, I would like to focus on you for some minutes. Why are you here today at 5:30 p.m. on the 4th of July here in Rwanda? Is it random chance? Or do you think that maybe you're here because of serendipity? Because maybe you're going to meet someone and some idea is going to finally be concrete. The essence of the Kigali Global Dialogues is to build partnerships, to build bridges between our countries and between our ideas. Do you think that maybe you are the person that is going to connect with these experts today? Well, let's find out. And today we're going to start with two questions. The first question is about best practices, because all the time we go to conferences where we can talk about the fourth industrial revolution for hours, but we want to know specific examples. What can we bring to our countries, to organizations? What can we copy? What can we leverage on? So let's start with maybe with Sujay, that is coming from India, and he's the CEO of iCure TechSoft. So maybe you can tell us, what is your company doing in order to, relocate human capital during the fourth industrial revolution?
Yeah, thank you. iCure is in the process of providing a primary healthcare which is affordable and accessible using technology intervention. We are already in 8 states in India, touching 8 million people. And our whole idea is how we would be able to select village women and train them and transform them as frontline community health workers by giving them smartphones with technology and medic bags that has various innovative point-of-care devices. So in a 3-layered architecture, we are able to provide a comprehensive primary care in the most remote parts where even there is no internet or electricity. So like the digital cards are given to the frontline health workers and the patients, and when the data is being scanned, automatically all the data shows up on the phone in and offline. And even when we are actually providing various medicines and spectacles, the entire transaction is captured in a supply chain model. And our solution is already being used in several countries in Africa, such as Uganda, Kenya, and now we are looking forward to work in other countries as well.
Perfect. I was wondering, maybe we can continue in the conversation on the next question, but Elodie, what are the skills that maybe we are needing now that are going to help us navigate through the fourth industrial revolution? As you are the Chief Skills Officer in Rwanda, maybe you can tell us which type of initiatives have been taken a lead on this?
Yes, sure. Thank you, and first of all, happy Liberation Day to all of you. Just to give you a little bit of background about the Chief Skills Office, it's under the Rwanda Development Board, and it's basically the apex body that coordinates all interventions and innovative ways to develop skills in the country, but also employment promotion. So the sectors we've been focusing on is ICT, agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. And as of recent, we just actually finished and developed a national skills development and employment promotion strategy, among other initiatives to boost the skills that are needed for the future, especially focused on digital literacy. Stocktake of existing skills and analysis of skills gaps for the priority sectors has been another intervention that we've been working on, as well as initiating strategic partnerships with training providers. So actually, if there are any training providers here in the audience, we're very much looking forward to partner with you in the sector of ICT and tourism and hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Diana, as the CEO of the Millennium Engineers, I think you have a lot to tell us about technology and how you're using it in Tanzania, but also in other African countries. So what can you tell us about that?
My name is Diana Mbogo from Tanzania. I run an initiative called Millennium Engineers, which is a renewable energy company developing customized solutions using solar and wind technologies. We've worked in South Africa, Mozambique, Swaziland, and Tanzania. What we're currently developing is customized solutions by creating creating solutions with our customers in hand. So we're currently working in Mwanza, which is the northern part of Tanzania. There's a lake called Lake Tanganyika, which is shared among the 3 countries of East Africa. What we did is over a past of 1.5 years, we went into that area, that community, and discovered their energy problems. And we wanted to transition them from the use of kerosene lanterns into using solar lamps. Now that transition took a very long time because initially there were retail sellers selling solar lamps in that community. So what we did is go into that community and start co-creating from the technology level of that solution with the fishermen in hand. So this alone gave us a really good scape in terms of understanding what our communities need in Africa. There are so many plenty solutions across the world that we are asked to use and implement in Africa. But are they catering for our needs? Are they catering for our cultural perspective and our norms and customs that we are used to? So some of the fishermen are still complaining that they can't use the solar lamp to light their cigarette, but that's not a problem. But in others' case, it's how we used them to co-create and find that ownership in the solutions that we provide. So in the long run, the solutions we are going to bring into Africa, the solutions we are going to adapt from our best practices around the world should cater and should be customized to cater for what we actually need for our regions and what we actually have in hand right now. So I think taking that into scale, the human capital in terms of resources, we can cater, use most of our best practices around the world and then customize them into catering for our needs. Yeah.
Thank you. Janai Bajain, I was wondering from the diplomatic area, like you have seen maybe how the academia works, how the NGOs and how the private is working. Are there any best practices that you can share with us that you think it's working?
Okay, thank you. First of all, good afternoon to you all. And let me use this opportunity to thank ORF and their partners for inviting me to this very important dialogue. And to also commend them for the diversity and the parity that I've seen in all of their panels. So congratulations for that. And I take the opportunity as well to thank the people of Rwanda for their hospitality and echo what my panelist has said here and convey best wishes on the anniversary of their Liberation Day. Now you've asked me about the Gambia, and as my role as ambassador, coming from one of the smallest and the least known countries in the world, even just walking in, somebody was asking me, the Gambia, where is that? I use every opportunity to talk about my country. So just to raise awareness about the beautiful, tranquil country that I come from. So I'll give you an example of some of the things that we're doing in the Gambia to combat underemployment and unemployment in this era. So in the Gambia, we have a very youthful population. There, between the 13 to 30 age group is about 60% of the population. And in recognition of this, the Gambia government has put youth empowerment in the center of its national development plan. Because we in the Gambia have seen the consequences of unemployment. We have this huge exodus of our youth crossing the Sahara Desert and drowning in the Mediterranean Sea to go to somewhere where they think there are better opportunities. So we've now started trying to mitigate this by formulating and implementing aggressively policies and programs that will address youth unemployment and underemployment, especially in this fourth industrial revolution. So we've got the National Youth Policy and the National Employment Policy, which are being worked on together. So in this era of the fourth industrial revolution, this era of science and technology, this era of big data and artificial intelligence, the government is looking at innovative ways of opening up avenues for young people to harness and exploit their academic and technical skills. Several projects and programs have been designed and implemented by the government of the Gambia, and one of them is the Youth Empowerment Project. And this project puts the market and the requirements of the market as its main objective. The project is jointly funded by the European Union, the Gambia government, the International Trade Center, which is part of the WTO, and the United Nations. And it's a model that is being used for different areas to ensure that the youth have the entrepreneurial skills that are required in this new industrial revolution. So, when we're looking at best practices and assessing models and things like that, and in cognizance of the fact that Africa has a very youthful population, it is absolutely necessary for national governments and regional bodies like the ECOWAS and the African Union and so on to carve out lasting solutions to these challenges that our youth are facing. And we have to make sure that the youth are put in the driving seat of some of these solutions so they have effective implementation of these things. So that's just a little bit about what the Gambia is doing in terms of preparing our youth to be job generators rather than job seekers, to reduce the level of unemployment and underemployment.
Thank you so much for that, because that also makes a nice transition to tell a little bit about what's happening in Latin America. I don't know how it's here, but based on the conversations I had, it's somewhere similar. So in Latin America, if you don't have money, your professional dreams may be truncated because you cannot go to conferences, you cannot even download the papers that you need to read. For example, if you're a molecular biologist, you have to pay for these articles. So something that I have detected is that in Latin America, we don't have mentoring programs for our youth. So 3 years ago, with a group of people, we decided to fund an organization that offers these mentoring programs. And what we do is to connect Latin American students and young professionals with professionals from abroad, like all of you, like me, and then they can guide them, they can tell them what's happening abroad, what's happening in Uganda, what's happening in Japan, and things like that. And I think that mentoring is maybe something that we are missing in our, not only in our curricula, but also like in the mentality, that we don't know that we need to be mentored even when we are working. So I guess my next question will be, based on the initiatives that you have described, what is the impact that you see that has happened or that may happen soon? Maybe we can start with you and IQ, Sujay?
Yeah, in our case, although my background, I have worked in IBM and Oracle for 12 years before starting iCure in 2010. And when we were actually looking at primary healthcare with a huge demand and the supply gap, like for in India, for almost 2,000 patients, we have just only one doctor. And for the next ever-growing increase in the population, we'll not be able to solve that problem in the next 50 or 100 years if we are not using technology. So we were looking at the healthcare in a completely different way, in a bottom-up approach, meaning that can we look at healthcare in a preemptive and preventive mechanism rather than on a curative model? Many people are thinking of building hospitals, but as you know that 90% of the healthcare is only required for primary care. If you are healthy enough, if you are educated enough, if you are learned enough, then we don't need to go to the hospitals at all. So this psychology we have imbibed in the society. For example, we have seen that when the doctors are writing iron and folic acid to the pregnant mother, the mother won't take that thinking that the baby would be dark in color. So these kind of challenges we had to deal with, and now we are working on a collaborative ecosystem wherein we understand that we don't have all the answers. It's like a black box. That's why we are working with ground partners, with many NGOs like Tata Trust, Rotary, Pradhan, with research partners, leading research partners like MIT, University of Michigan, McGill. Like with McGill, we have worked on the model that can we use frontline community health workers to give them technology solution. And here, the technology just does not mean Google Forms to capture a few sets of data. It also means that, for example, we have a sensor device that if one drop of blood is collected on the CellScope machine, it will be able to detect the person is having oral cancer or not within 10 minutes. So these kind of technologies we have been able to prove to the last mile in the remote regions. And now we are looking forward to work with various partners, not only in India, but also several parts in East Africa, in other parts of Africa, and in Southeast Asia to work on that model.
Thank you. Diana, what can you tell us about the impact of your technology in the model that you have created?
one thing we noted when we started is that we, as a company, we usually try to reduce cost. So reducing cost, it's us who do the maintenance of the devices that we give and sell out. And then as time went by, we started discovering that if we are going to be the ones maintaining these devices, we are always going to be going on site every time and every time. And these devices are not so huge. It can be taught by any other person, even an illiterate, and slowly they can understand how to maintain them. So we started adapting what is called capacity building in terms of our customers. So we teach them how to maintain those devices in order to last longer. And this is something I think the fourth industrial revolution is going to need, because if we keep depending on our companies or our industries to do most of the work in terms after sales services, it will really cost us in the end. But at the same time, while we are trying to build that capacity in terms of technical know-how in maintenance of these new technologies, we are also creating jobs for them, because as they are maintaining, some of them will know exactly how to maintain. They'll help the others maintain. Yep. So they'll create jobs themselves, and some will start creating more activities and more functions of those devices that we give them. So in the end of the day, it becomes like a revolving industry. One industry builds another industry, and then another industry builds another industry. So we build service providing, we build the hardware and the technology, they build the service part. So it's a whole value chain that we are supposed to start building, and through that, I think we can now start incorporating more youth and women and other groups that along the way and create a long value chain.
Thank you. Elodie, what about the programs?
I'll talk about a couple of interventions that we've focused on at the Chief Skills Office. One of them is really working with the IPR Rwanda Polytechnique, and it has 8 IPRCs. Those are vocational colleges. And so we really try to emphasize on vocational training for industrial attachment, just to sort of boost the capacity building of the trainees. But one initiative that I would like to focus on is the internship program, just in line with the mentorship program that you talked about in Latin America. We have an internship program and a database of quite a number of interns. And under the office, we try to attach them to different companies, not only public sector, but we also try to engage the private sector, because we know the relevance of engaging private sector in boosting the employment promotion in the country. So we try to identify companies that would take in interns for 6 months and then pathway them into job opportunities, hopefully. So by then, if they have at least 6 months of internship, they're able to have the soft skills required and the confidence required to have a job, rather than struggling for a couple of months looking for a job. So it's a good transition to have. So we're really focused on the internship program. It's been going well, but we would like to raise more awareness and bring in the private sector to understand the importance of engaging interns. Thank you.
Thank you. Janava Jane, would you like to add?
Just to add on what my panelist member here has said, it's important that these bridges are built between all the players. So you've got your individuals, you've got the private sector, or industry, or government institutions, and you've got academia as well. And so the example that she's given there, where they're placing interns, in these companies, and they work and they have the experience. Academic institutions can do more of their part by reviewing their curricula on a regular basis, based on the requirements of the market. And they can initiate more flexible teaching and learning hours and mechanisms. So those who are working or those who are interns can still go to the office and yet also still go to for classes. And you've also got the private sector or the government institutions or offices who can also be more flexible with their working hours to allow the staff that they have there at the moment to also go and get more capacity building at these higher learning institutions or or these TVET skills centers and so on. And they can also, this also ensures for these offices that their staff are gaining new skills that will be required, as the revolutions keep on evolving. Mm-hmm. And for the individuals as well, people should not be afraid to change career paths. Yes. Gone are the days where you have your one stagnant job for 30, 40 years. The market is changing at a very rapid rate now. So people should not be afraid of failing and afraid of trying new career paths. And people should also inculcate lifelong learning in themselves and know that their skills required in the markets will constantly be evolving. So therefore, they should also be willing to evolve and keep on learning to cater. Yeah, precisely.
Thank you. This is very interesting because it reminds me a lot of the stories that we have with our mentees in the program of Ekpa'palek. And in terms of impact and results, I can say that, for example, some of our mentees got internships at Harvard University, at the university in Chile, and that's one example. But you also have the examples when a mentee comes to us and says, no one in my family supports me to study a career. They are telling me that I'm losing my time and I should go and work. Mm-hmm. So then we have a mentor that can tell them, these are the possibilities that can be open to you and for your future career. We also have an online campaign that is called Latin American Women Influencers. And in 5 minutes, we tell narratives, stories of women like you, like me, how did they make it? Why did they study that career? Why did they switch careers? Because something that we're good at, I think, in the Global South is the stories, the power of the stories, and to pass it from one person to the other one. So I think that's also something very important to keep in mind. And that also leads me to the next question. Will it be, what do you think we are not having in the conversation about 4th Industrial Revolution and the future of work? We go usually to different events and we talk about these topics, but under your point of view and from the countries that you come, what do you think we are missing? What no one is talking about? Maybe Sujay, would you like to start?
Yeah, in the 4th Industrial Revolution, we all talk about the newer technologies, automation, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. And at iCure, we have been also implementing some of that. For example, we have the Forest Fundus imaging machine that can do the retinal examination for the NCD people who are suffering from diabetes. Can we do the retinal examination? And we see that we don't have enough retina specialists or ophthalmologists to test that. That's why we have implemented AI. Similarly, we are seeing a lot of problems related to continuum of care, like the patients who are being discharged from the hospitals, they're getting lost in the community. In no way the patients from their doorsteps can reach out to the doctors or the specialists on time and in need. That's why we have brought in some life sensors, like it's a patch. Once you apply that patch, it transmits EKG, body movement, pulse, and several other parameters. And using real-time and AI in partnership with IBM Watson, we are able to monitor, let's say, thousands of patients based on the risk criteria. And this solution was selected as part of the HIMSS conference in Orlando this year in February. So having said all of that, we understand that being a for-profit entity, it's important to make profits, but let us not be capitalist. Let us try to think humans being humans, and the technologies are there for the humans. For example, in some cases, what we are seeing that there is a breach wherein the problems of privacy and several other challenges which we are seeing. So even in case of AI, we want to ensure AI is ethical. That's why we have created a framework. Even the government of India has come up with some of the initiatives that can AI be ethical in the healthcare context, in the other context, to see that these are the limitations that can not be breached under any circumstances. And the time has come that we think in those directions so that the technology which we are adopting is inclusive in nature, it is able to do good for the humans in all levels. I think we all need to really, really think loud on this context.
Thank you. Maybe Elodie, would you like to continue?
Sure. I really think one aspect that we may be missing on as we think of the 4th Industrial Revolution are the soft skills, and specifically focused on communication skills, language skills, as well as emotional intelligence. It's probably aspects that we underestimate, but that will be important for us humans as we interact with computers and technology will have to understand the importance of perceiving our emotions, but those of others as well. So the two items I would focus on are soft skills and emotional intelligence especially.
Perfect. Diana?
One I'll say is cultural barriers that we actually have in Africa. If we take a look at an example, I'll take an example of Tanzania. If you go in one of those pharmaceutical shops owned by an Indian, you will find during summer holidays that most of their kids are the ones that are usually doing the sales activity. That, to them, it's actually passing that knowledge and know-how to their children. Those children grow up to become pharmaceuticals themselves or owning a shop of pharmacy. But most Africans do not do that, but we already are having lots and lots of entrepreneurship skills and know-how from ourselves, from our parents. We are taught how to cook at home, but why don't we get taught how to do business of cooking? Why don't we get taught to do different other businesses that our parents are doing as Africans? And I find this as a very big barrier that African parents are not having these conversations with their children, while this could be the first educational platform for kids while we are growing for the fourth industrial revolution. If I look at 20 years, just 5 years ago and right now, e-commerce has swept off Africa right now, and it's actually creating more than it's going to create more than 3 million jobs by 2025. It's estimated to generate more than USD $25 billion. So that's a very big scope to start having conversations on. And I think as Africans, we're not looking at it in a very wider scope or in a deeper scope. We're looking at it as just something, just a new technology, or this is something we can use, but in real sense, that can take us from point A to point Z in a very short time. So if we start encountering these conversations with both adults as parents and our children together with youth, it will bring about that evolution, that what can we do that the practices that are already been done by our parents can now be technologically transferred to us, and now use the technology that we use and the e-commerce to actually adapt and push that forward. So if we can adapt that chain, I think we'll be in a very good scope.
Thank you.
Again, just to build up on what my panelist member here has been saying, so not to necessarily focus on what is not being spoken about, but what more we can do. So as to follow up on what she's saying, that we should start them young. We should ensure that we leverage the potentials of technology that we currently have, and the media as well, for early childhood development programs, and address the quality and efficiency concerns across all the educational levels. So start them young in knowing, about what they want to do in the future. It can change using, current available technology to ensure that this is done effectively. Now, some of the things that, we also need to focus on, especially, okay, again, I'll speak about the Gambia, and I guess most of this can be contextualized across Africa, is to ensure that we address the issues of data inadequacy, to know what we have missing, I suppose, in Africa and also some of these Latin American countries, in terms of the scanty capacity building and employment data that we need to map efficiently what skills were being developed for the upcoming job markets, and use it for policy planning and monitoring of these development outcomes. The identification of these skills gaps as well will ensure that we know where to pump our resources in terms of education and the training institutions to address these capacity-related constraints. Again, in talking about resources, it will also help us reevaluate country investments in the constraints that we have, and to develop also private enterprises. So just that basically, to be more inclusive and considerate
Yep.
of all the various sectors as well. So let's not also forget the informal sector in this new industrial revolution that we're going through. These are things to consider.
Yes, thank you. In my case, I think that what we are missing is that we are not talking about adult learning. We are focusing always, and of course, we have to focus on children and young, but in youth. But I also think that the elders and the people that is
lifelong learning.
becoming should be gaining new skills and new types of roles for the society. For example, when I was living in Brisbane, the City Hall was giving free courses on 3D printing, 3 courses on how to blog for adult people. So I think that these are things that we can also try to implement. Myself, I'm always wondering, I do science advice for governments, and I think that maybe in 10 years, an AI bot is gonna be doing it, because in 1 second can get all the information in the world and then maybe generate an advice. So I'm also thinking like which kind of skills I have to gain in the next 2 years in order to still be working. So in order to do a transition to the questions, my last question will be, what do you think you can offer to this audience? In order, if they want to do a partnership with you, or if they want to build bridges with you, what do you think you can offer them today? Suja?
Yeah, I think it's all about co-creation. No single entity can do everything all alone. Since the time, for the past 2 years, we have been working with several partners in Africa, in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam and several other countries. And every terrain, every region has its own sets of challenges, its own sets of answers. The demographies are different, the languages are different, the cultures are different. And it's also about, like we are working with CHMI, Center for Health Market and Initiative, where it's more of learn and launch that, for example, the community mobilization, the answer that we have learned, how we would be able to provide such solutions to other counterparts. And similarly, there are many entities and many enterprises who have some of the answers known to them, and how we would be able to adopt such solutions in other parts. So for our case, like we have really figured that out, that how we can create sustainable, replicable primary healthcare model. And our solution has won awards all the way up to the United Nations. So we really want to work very closely with government, semi-government, and various partners. Recently, we have launched a complete digital health clinic in Maodem in Meghalaya, which is in northern eastern part of India. It's a very, very remote terrain, and there are no doctors were available for the last 5-6 years. So we have actually selected and trained these village women and transformed them as frontline community health workers, and they are able to do a complex set of tasks, right from BP checkup to ECG machine to the ECG reporting, and almost around 35 kind of tests that could be done in this remote clinic all alone. So we know, and after saying this, the Chief Minister of Meghalaya wants us to scale this to around 100 locations just in that state itself. We firmly believe that such solutions will be not only be applicable to India, but also many other parts in Africa and in other countries. So we'd be happy to co-create and share our knowledge and learnings of that. And similarly, we look forward to various other things like the nutritional aspects, which are very strong here, and how we would be able to adopt that in the Indian context.
Thank you. Diana?
I would say we are living in an era of rapid technological change, and with that, I do believe that our ability to learn from each other and adapt to this change will help us survive this era. For us, I would say I would offer my skills in terms of how to develop business models in communities and adaptable business models in low-income communities. That is one. How to revolutionize and help communities adapt to these new technologies. How to co-create solutions with communities, because I do believe that Africa right now needs as much technological change as we are progressing. And with that, we cannot just push those technologies to our communities, but we need to start adapting and understanding what the communities need. Now, how to work through with communities in doing that, understanding their needs in their perspective, and us explaining to them our perspective in terms of advantages of using these technologies and where it will take them. And then coming out with business models that will be shared as co-created with them and us, them as customers and us as the client, us as the creators. That bond and how to move into that industrial revolution, I think that is most of the skills I can provide.
Thank you. Elodie?
Sure. This platform is already something, is a good platform. I think it's something we should encourage and boost in frequently and have such discussions to learn from each other, best practices, best lessons learned globally. And so I think I would encourage that we have more of such discussions, but also we would like to invite any investors who are targeted on skills development and come to RDB so we could tell you more about the support we can give you if you're looking into starting up a business here or even as a training, service training provider. We are very much focused in partnering with you, and that's what we have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna Ivajan?
So there's several aspects, so it can be done in both ways. Now, for the Gambia, in taking from what Suje was saying, that we should not forget the human being from this. The Gambia is still a society where the human is still put first. We might be one of the smallest, one of the financially poorest countries in the world. However, the human is still put first. If you go to a home of a family of 10, for example, and they have 2 cups of rice amongst 10 people, you come in as a visitor, they will still share that rice with you, so that the human is still there. So if you know, that aspect of things is being set aside by people or forgotten by people, the Gambia is a way of getting that humanity back in. And in terms of, you know, us learning from others as well, I mean, I will take you up on your offer to ensure that we have some Gambians come here for, you know, technical assistance or expert advice on some of these things. But in general, in my capacity, there's, for the Gambia, I'm going to say, you know, we're open to collaborate in all areas, in all aspects. So if you get in touch with me, I will channel, you know, whatever kind of collaboration that any of the audience members here want to do in the Gambia, and make sure that it lands on the right desks. But I think that's more of a private conversation than a recorded one to be aired. Yeah.
Thank you. I think in my case, what I can offer you is I do a lot of capacity building for training scientists to talk with policymakers and policymakers to talk with scientists and then create better policies. So that will be one of the things. And of course, in mentoring students and young professionals is something that, well, now we have 3 years of experience, so we can help each other. Do we have any questions? This is the time where you can stand up and maybe say, like, I'm doing this, and this is also a good example of best practices in my country for the 4th Industrial Revolution. Do we have someone there? No one.
Everybody's hungry and sleepy. What's going on?
Well, if we don't have anyone, then maybe we can continue this conversation. And then what would you like to see achieved in these conversations between India and Kigali, in Rwanda, between Tanzania? Is there something that you would like to see in the next 2 years, 5 years, something concrete that comes to your mind and close to your heart? Sujai?
Yeah, so for example, we are in the process of setting up a chain of primary healthcare models as a hub and spoke model, which we are already doing in India. And we are also working with several partners in East Africa, wherein, for example, initially we provided them with just pure technology, but then we also, you know, told them that how they would be able to monetize that whole process in terms of creating additional services, creating additional revenue models. So now they are very happy that whatever the learnings and the experiences that we have collected so far, we are able to imbibe and share those learnings in terms of creating a viable business model, in terms of creating a viable revenue model. And we are happy that post this, they have actually secured funding and investment in Africa. So we're happy, and actually I'll be traveling to Uganda after this trip to see the things in action.
Thank you, Sujai. Diana?
One is sustainable partnerships that are concrete, and I've found that they take each side's ideas. So I look into the next industrial revolution as a very good platform to start creating these partnerships, because through partnerships we can engage each other in terms of technology, we can engage each other in terms of best practices, we can engage each other in terms of academia, institutions, ministries, agencies, capacity building. So all that can help us both together in working through this era. So I think conversations and partnerships should start, and it's something I would love to see being created and pushed forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Elodie?
Thank you. Just to reiterate to what my fellow panelists said, again, is strategic partnerships, not only with the fellow panelists here, but also with the audience at large, and trying to boost exchange programs within the different countries. Let's say if there's a best practice in India, seeing how to connect that to our healthcare programs here. And even in Tanzania, it's not too far away from here. I believe the exchange programs that we could have in between, whether it's vocational trainings or focused on education programs, seeing how our youth can also have that exposure to see what's happening beyond the borders of Rwanda. And so that would be a great partnership to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I would say, again, continuing from what she has just said in terms of strategic partnerships, is also ensuring that you hear the right voices. So based on the theme of this conference, making sure that there's gender involvement in all aspects of things. In addition to talking about how the youth voice should have been heard, I would also reiterate that the women voices have to be heard. The unemployment rate amongst the young people around the world is a challenge that's confronting all governments, not just in this fourth industrial revolution that we're going in, but over all the other types of revolutions that have gone by. So I think it's important now, and that in terms of addressing unemployment and underemployment, especially amongst those who are the unemployed and underemployed, which is the youth and the women, that their voices should be heard in the development of all these agendas that are going to address all the issues that we've been discussing, not just in this panel, but in all the other panel discussions that have been had throughout the past day and a half.
Yes, I think my personal dream is to see the Global South empowering each other, that the brain drain happens from Peru to the Gambia, from the Gambia to Vietnam, from India to Somalia, and then maybe this can happen. So let's see what we can do. Let's think about this, and let's enjoy dinner if that's next on the agenda.